Have you ever felt completely, entirely alone in the dark? I want you to really put yourself there for a second. Imagine that highly vulnerable feeling. You're tucked away, knees pulled tight to your chest, just waiting in absolute breathless silence. You're playing a game, right? I mean, it's supposed to be fun. But then, an unfamiliar sound cuts through the silence. A floorboard creaks, a footstep drops, and you know, deep down in your bones, that it doesn't belong to anyone you're actually playing with. That sudden icy drop in your stomach, well, that is exactly what we're dissecting today.
Welcome to The Explainer. I am so excited to dive into this one with you. Today, we're taking a fascinating and honestly totally chilling look at a collection of 3 first-hand accounts where an innocent childhood game of hide-and-seek suddenly morphed into a very real survival scenario. We're going to break down the exact moments, the timelines, and the psychology of what actually happens when the people trying to hide realize they're actually being hunted by someone else entirely. Now, the core concept we're going to see across all 3 of these accounts is what I like to call the anomaly. So what is that? It's that terrifying psychological shift, the exact second your brain registers that the footsteps, the breathing, or the rustling leaves literally cannot be accounted for by the known players. It's this incredibly primal fear of transitioning from a willing participant in a fun game to actual active prey. Let's look at how this anomaly plays out in our very first environment.
Case Study 1, The Locked House.
So picture this. It's a cold Friday night in late September. A 15-year-old boy is home alone, so he invites his best friend Chris over. The parents are out for the evening, so they decide to play hide-and-seek in the dark. They turn off all the lights except the one in the kitchen. And this is where the anomaly begins. Our narrator is hiding completely out of sight under the guest bedroom bed. The sensory details here are intensely focused. He hears heavy footsteps come up the stairs, check the bathroom, and walk right into the guest room. He even hears the breathing of the person standing right next to the bed. But here's the massive catch. When the narrator finally gives up and heads downstairs, he finds Chris down in the basement. Chris never went upstairs. Actually, Chris claimed he heard breathing when he checked the guest room earlier. They were definitely not alone in that house.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how fast the illusion of safety shatters. So, the boys try to shake it off. They sit back on the couch, trying to watch TV, but then the escalation begins. First, there's a heavy bump upstairs. You try to rationalize it. Maybe it's just a house settling, but then they hear the unmistakable slow creak of floorboards in the hallway. They creep upstairs, and from behind a closed guest room door, a door our narrator distinctly remembers leaving cracked open, by the way, they hear fabric dragging against the carpet. And finally, the ultimate red flag. The front door downstairs opening and closing. Someone was actively moving around their house.
The absolute most crucial point here is how this completely overrode their normal baseline of security. When the narrator approached that guest room door, gripping a fireplace poker for dear life, his hands were physically shaking with just visceral fear. They yank open the closet door, and it's empty. But the sheer terror of knowing a stranger was maneuvering through their darkened home had fully set in.
So they retreat to a darkened bedroom on the first floor. As they listen terrified, they hear footsteps moving through the first floor, and then, crucially, the basement door opens. They hear the steps descend, and that moment, that was their only window. With the intruder down in the basement, the 2 boys absolutely sprint out the back door and run entirely across the street to Chris's house to call the cops. The police ended up finding absolutely no signs of forced entry. It leaves us with this haunting mystery, but it proves that hiding in the dark of your own home can completely mask an invisible threat.
Moving on to Case Study 2, The Dark Woods. Okay, so now we're out of a confined house and into the dark woods on a muggy August night. 5 friends, all around 14 years old, are playing hide and seek. Now, in the woods, at night, the darkness literally swallows the light. It strips away your sense of direction and makes everyone just look like a shadow. Think about the known variables here. The narrator and his 4 friends, Tyler, Matt, Jason, and Eric. But then, the anomaly introduces a totally unaccounted for set of variables. We're talking heavy crunching footsteps that do not match the kids, a low whisper out in the tall grass, and the absolutely chilling presence of a tall man, just standing and watching. The first real moment of realization happens when the narrator is crouched behind a fallen log in the pitch black. I want you to really put yourself behind that log. You're holding your breath, trying to win the game, right? You hear footsteps crunching through the leaves, moving between the trees. They stop right near you. You think, oh, it's just my friend Jason, he's the seeker. But later on, you find out Jason never went anywhere near that far into the woods. So who or what was standing right next to you in the pitch black? The tension completely peaks later when the narrator is hiding in the tall grass and hears an unexplained low whisper right beside him. But the true horror is revealed at the very end of the night. When the boys are finally relaxing, little Matt speaks up. He confirms the narrator wasn't just imagining things. While he was hiding, Matt actually saw a tall man standing in the woods. And the craziest part? The man wasn't playing the game. He was just standing there, completely motionless in the dark, watching the kids. No way. Just absolutely terrifying. Let's dive into case study 3, the open yard. We are now in a sprawling rural Pennsylvania backyard on a hot July afternoon. It's broad daylight, a group of boys is playing basketball, when a total stranger just casually walks out of the woods. Now in hindsight, the warning signs are absolutely glaring. The kid introduces himself as Keith. He's an older teen, maybe 16. He walked out of the woods completely uninvited. He suggests they play manhunt and specifically notes the yard is perfect for it, which, think about it, how would he even know that? He immediately volunteers to be the seeker, giving himself total control over hunting the younger boys, and then, after catching a few of them, he just vanishes from the property without saying a single word. Talk about red flags. So, during the game, our narrator hides under a folded tarp in an old gasoline-scented storage shed right at the edge of the yard. It sounds like a great hiding spot, right? But think about how vulnerable it actually makes him. He's totally isolated, literally blind under a tarp, waiting for an unknown older teenager to come find him. Ultimately, his friend Adam finds him first, and they realize Keith has completely disappeared. But the anomaly doesn't end when the sun goes down. That evening, the narrator finds something genuinely chilling. A weathered, dirty piece of rope left on the grass right by his bedroom window. He knows for a fact it wasn't there earlier in the day. This completely bridges the gap between a seemingly innocent, albeit super weird, daytime game and a calculated nighttime invasion. The game of manhunt wasn't over. Keith had just delayed it. Let's trace the escalating events of that night because it's wild. Around 11 p.m., the narrator hears soft footsteps right outside his bedroom door. Now, he thinks it's his dad, but his dad usually coughs or clears his throat. These steps are completely silent. After locking his door, he hears the front door of the house shut heavily. He wakes his dad, who searches the entire house with a shotgun, but finds nothing. Then, at 2 a.m., a slow scratching sound begins on the bedroom window glass. And this leads to the terrifying climax of our third story. The narrator carefully bends the blinds open, just a crack, and there, on the very other side of the window, was a figure, inches away in the dark. The dad immediately runs outside, firing 2 rounds from his shotgun into the air, which thankfully causes the figure to flee. But the horrifying implication still remains. What on earth was the plan with that piece of rope if the narrator hadn't woken up? The game changes forever. Let's look at the psychology of the hunt.
So, what does this all mean? All 3 of these accounts tap deeply into the exact same primal fears. By looking at the psychology of the hunt, we can really understand why playing hide and seek makes us so uniquely vulnerable to actual danger. The game literally forces you to impose isolation on yourself. You tuck yourself under beds, behind logs, or under tarps in sheds, places where you are effectively trapped. You become hyper-focused on auditory cues, just waiting for the seeker. And worst of all, you totally discard your normal safety instincts. If you normally hear a stranger in the woods, your instinct says run or yell, but the rules of the game say hold your breath and stay still. When an actual intruder enters the scenario, they exploit those exact self-imposed vulnerabilities, leading to that devastating realization that you aren't playing anymore. You are prey.
We've explored the timelines, the sensory details, and the sheer terror of these real-life anomalies. It just brilliantly illustrates how razor-thin the line is between childhood fun and absolute horror. So, I want to leave you with this final lingering thought. Next time you find yourself in the pitch black, just listening to the silence, when you hide in the dark, how do you really know who else is hiding with you? Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me today. Stay safe out there, and stay curious.